We will now begin part 2 of the transition module, and this is the part that's talking about supporting transition in the IEP. At age 14, the IEP that the student may have had since they were much younger expands, and it opens up a whole section on transition, and it focuses on 3 post-secondary goal areas. And those areas relate to what the student wishes and hopes to do related to post-secondary education and training, what they hope to do with regards to employment, and what they hope to do with regards to independent living. Of those 3 goal areas, 2 of them are required for all students, the education and training and employment. The independent living goal is a goal area that may be needed for a student that requires adult assistance to accomplish everyday tasks or stay involved with the community. Um, but some students may have a disability, but it doesn't impact their ability to do what their typical peers are doing. In the IEP, this is where you'll see these post-secondary areas, and they are called in the transition grid. So what you see is you see that the post-secondary education and training. So in that little box, you would see something like after high school, Jonathan hopes to attend a 2-year college to study elementary education or something similar to that. You would then circle that there is a measurable annual goal that is related to the post-secondary goal. You would fill in the courses of study that the student is taking at their current time, and then the teacher would fill in services and activities and how those would happen. So again, this is a section. The grid is not typically answered or completed in the IEP until the student is turning 14. For post-secondary education and training, what we have to ask ourselves is what further education or training does the student need to meet their goal? So depending on what they're interested in doing later in life, does that career, does that job require a 2 or a 4-year college degree? Is it something that they can attend a technical or a trade school, which is definitely needed in today's world? Is it military training that they would go to rather than the other 2 that I just mentioned? Many of our learners go right into the job and they receive on the job training. So is that their goal, to have on the job training in a certain area? Some of our learners may go into a licensing program so that they're not attending a 2 or a 4-year college, but they're attending a program that they will get a license to become a certain career. Or are they going into further adult education or training because they just didn't accomplish everything they needed to before they were 21? Some possible transition activities that would be related to an education and training goal would be to attend a college fair. Many of our colleges and universities have offered things remotely or virtually due to the COVID and the restrictions on travel and groups. So it has really been a great opportunity to attend multiple things or to go on a college or a facility tour. So again, many of those have opened up and created virtual experiences, which is a very convenient thing for families, and it allows for students to maybe go on more than just 1 or 2. If they're planning on going to a college or a university, they would need to register for the PSAT or the SAT. If they're looking at the armed services, they would need to take the test for that, which is the ASVAB. If they are considering the career and the career says that it requires a post-secondary degree, then they would want to research different post-secondary education settings. All of our post-secondary education settings should have some type of a disability services program. So students with a disability should definitely be familiar with that. Reach out to the disability services to see what type of supports and accommodations are permitted, and that might be the deciding factor between college A or college B. It would definitely be important for the student to meet with a guidance counselor to make sure that they are taking the prerequisite courses that are needed for the area they would like to move into after high school. And of course, those things are not free and they are certainly not cheap. So, an activity could be that they would learn how to apply for financial aid or research financial aid and scholarships. Those are all transition activities that you could write into the IEP that would be related to the post-secondary education and training goal. What Pennsylvania would like you to realize is that college is a possibility for all students, regardless of having a disability or not. We're making sure that students with disabilities are pursuing competitive and integrated employment. And though many of those types of employment opportunities involve post-secondary education or college. So in a nutshell, all that we, meaning teachers, parents, and paraprofessionals, have done for students during K to 12 becomes the responsibility of the student. So that's a big preparation step. And in fact, privacy laws require colleges to speak directly with the student. So the student must provide written permission for the college to speak to the parent. So that is a learning adjustment. So there are some resources that you can find if you would search going to college and just kind of getting ready with a checklist. Many times that we as parents and especially paraprofessionals, we do a lot of things to help students accomplish day-to-day tasks. And college just doesn't allow for that support to continue. It really puts the ownership on the student. So the student should become much more familiar with doing those things by themselves. If the student that you're working with is considering attending college, it's really important for us to make sure that they are aware that they are not entitled to the same level of support as they receive in high school. There is no guarantee of services. All of the accommodations and decisions are made on a case by case, course by course, college by college decision. So that's why it's really important for a student with a disability to really research. Some colleges might give more accommodations than others, and that could help be the deciding factor on which college the student selects. The eligibility for these supports and services is based on a substantial functional limitation. So it can't be just a minor thing, it has to be substantial, meaning that it drastically impacts their ability to be successful. And the students are responsible for seeking out and initiating these services. Mom, dad, teacher, paraprofessional, we can't call and ask for these things, but we can be behind the student while they are researching online to see what's available and helping them, maybe giving them a script of questions to ask when they do call. The key differences between high school and colleges are listed on this slide. In high school, we're looking at 5 or 6 hours a day of classes, where in college, you're looking at 4 or 5 classes with 3 to 4 hours each per week. You might have 2 to 3 hours a day for homework in college. For high school. For college, you might have 2 hours per day or 2 hours in class. There's a lot of quizzes and non-cumulative tests, but in college, most of the things are 2 to 3 cumulative exams that capture a whole lot of information. High school, you teach content from textbooks in many cases, whereas in college, it's very research-based and primary sources. High school, the class sizes are normally 20 to 25, whereas in college, you could have anywhere from 10 to 300. So those are those large classes in auditoriums. And in high school, you're usually in one building and moving around from class to class, but in college, you might have to move from building to building all around the campus. Another big difference that has occurred since last year is many of our colleges, and including high schools too, have gone virtual. So they have had to do a lot of the work on their own and a lot of considerations taken into place. So it's really important for us to educate students when they're deciding that they're going to go to college, to make sure that they know the difference between what a high school environment and classroom is like compared to a college. To prepare students, we need to talk to them. You're the paraprofessional, so are they waking themselves up in the morning, or do they need mom and dad to do that? Are they actually engaged in their IEP meetings and even maybe running them, or do they sit back very passively and let everybody talk about them? Um, Check with your students that you work with, and do they do anything to schedule their own appointments, or is that something mom and dad do? Do they refill medications, or again, is it a parent that does that? Are they good with time management, and do they use their time wisely, and do they manage their own time, or do they require an adult to do that for them? Do they do any volunteer things, or do they work in a job? And do they take any kind of independent living skills classes, and do they work on those things like how to do laundry, how to wash dishes, how to cook? Do they do any of these things? If students are doing these things and involved in these things, they're more likely to be successful in a college or university environment. For employment, we're looking at what type of work does the student ultimately want to do. And when we're talking about that, our goal in Pennsylvania, again, is to try to encourage as many students as possible, regardless of disability, to get competitive integrated employment. So let me tell you about that. Competitive means that they're getting a fair wage. They're not getting a wage that's less than the other people working there. They're getting a fair wage for the job that they're doing. Integrated means that they are not only working with other disabled individuals, but they are working with non-disabled and disabled individuals in an integrated environment. Okay, so that's the ideal, but not everybody can attain that. So perhaps they will be able to attain competitive integrated employment with support. So the with support means that they could be getting a job coach, or they could have an agency representative that helps them with their success at their job. And that could be something that's done short term, or it could be something that's more on a long term basis. Maybe the employment is going to be in an adult training facility that has staff that's there to support their success. And again, maybe the employment is going to be the military, or maybe they will be self-employed and they will start their own business of some sort. That is becoming more and more of a possibility as people get creative with their employment opportunities. Some transition activities that go along with the employment goal are exploring careers. There are so many resources online for exploring all different types of careers. So when you have students that say that they're interested in this, that, or the other, it's really good to find those experiences and have them watch videos of what it's like to be in that career. Do they like getting dirty? Does this job get dirty? Do they like working in a group, or do they like to work alone? So exploring careers is a great place to start. They can also conduct in-school work experience. So they might be doing some things in school, like delivering mail, picking up recycling, maybe helping to clean with maybe helping to cook if the school has a restaurant. The other thing they could do is do a job shadow, where they actually go out into the field and they shadow someone doing a career that they're interested in. They could very well participate in a work-based learning experience. Many times those are compensated with a salary, so you could get into those, and many times those things are set up with our agency partners. They could research the resources on the CareerLink site. They could definitely make an OVR referral and follow the process to open a case with OVR. They could make a mental health or an intellectual disabilities referral with SAM Inc. They could do a mock interview where they practice answering interview questions, and they could practice filling out a paper or an online job application. All of these activities can be put into their IEP and can be done in the classroom with support with paraprofessional and teacher help. And those would help them to work towards achieving their employment goals. Independent living is the final post-secondary goal area. And this is where we're thinking, where does the student want to live after high school? And how will he or she get involved in the community? So based on what we know about the student at the time of the IEP, are they able to take care of themselves independently of a child at that age? Obviously, 13-year-olds, what you expect them to do on their own is different than an 18-year-old. So if they're 16 years old and they have their permit and they have a part-time job and they're doing all these great things in their community, they're involved with their church or they're involved with Boy Scouts, chances are that student's going to be able to handle those things on their own when they leave high school. Some of our students are doing all those great things, but with a lot of family support. So after high school, are they going to continue to need the family support? Maybe they'll need agency support, or maybe they will have to live in some type of a group support home environment. So again, you want to look at that and you want to choose which of the independent living goals best fits that child. So transition activities related to independent living include transportation, whether they're getting a driver's license or a photo ID, whether they're using public transportation. Are they registered to vote if they're ready? Do they know how to register to the vote? Do they know how to have daily living skills and survival skills? Do they know how to eat? Do they know how to make food? Do they know how to take care of themselves, keep their hygiene? So those are all kind of things that we can work on while we have them in school. You can open a case with OVR or with SAM, and that would help them to get into supports, community living arrangements, and some respite care. So those are all activities that would relate to independent living. I have mentioned numerous times that we are dealing with agencies. Many of our students are involved with agency supports while they're attending high school. But as students leave high school, they may still require support when in their post-school setting. So there are many adult service agencies that can provide this support. And we turn from a difference into what they're eligible for in kindergarten through grade 12 to versus what they are entitled to. So agencies, or actually I mixed that up in my presentation. So let me say that correctly. When they get into the adult agencies after high school, they have to determine, the agency will determine if they're eligible for services versus what they're entitled when they are attending school K to 12. Okay, so it is important for them to realize that they're not going to possibly be eligible for all of the supports and help that they've been getting in the school setting. Examples of agencies are listed here, and there are numerous. So we work very closely with many of them, and some of them, Centers for Independent Living helps with the independent living goal and making sure they even do some job coaching. We have children and youth. We have mental health, which is becoming a very needed area. And we have the OVR, or Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. That concludes part 2. So please look at your anticipatory guide and answer the questions for part 2.